panel here. Radhika, Lavanya, Malika, all three of you have built phenomenal organizations, and all three of you are really torchbearers for what is happening in retail in India. And I'm very excited to get your thoughts on a lot of exciting perspective, on a lot of exciting problems and opportunities that we are seeing in retail. So maybe we could start with Malika. Uh, Malika, just a quick starting point here, to start the conversation here. Maybe good to start with what are the biggest changes you have seen in retail over the past decade. You have been running the mom's company since 6 years, 7 years now. It would be fantastic to learn your perspective on how you have seen the market evolve and
Yeah,
the customer preferences evolve.
yeah, sure. Hi, Pratik. Thank you, Ty, for having me. I think it's a very interesting question. It's been 5 years that I've been running the mom's company. And a few of the very interesting things that I've seen is that the world has moved from retail to online to omnichannel. And omnichannel is the next wave to go, right? You would see different patterns where we've actually seen consumers walk into the store, pick up, like the product, check the rates online, and then make a decision on whether they want to sort of make the purchase from the retail store or they want to make it online, right? Which has made things at the back end very, very different for everybody else, right? So, for instance, distributors, the shopkeepers, the retailers are all having conversations with keeping online world relevant and also in mind before they take any decisions. It could be in terms of pricing, it could be in terms of margins, it could be in terms of delivery, or it could be most importantly in terms of experience, right? So it's a very interesting thing to see. And you've also seen in the last 1 year the wave of online first D2C brands open retail stores and enter the retail world, which is also a very important sign giving to the world saying that the future is going to be omni channel for us. So it's a very interesting time for everyone. I think it's a consumer's world today. It's the consumer's day. They're pretty much ruling all decisions that brands are taking and everyone else is taking as well. So whether it is a retailer or an online seller or a D2C brand, everybody is kind of taking decisions based on what the consumer needs are and how is it that we can add maximum comfort into the shopping behavior or shopping experience for the consumer.
This is fantastic, and we'll unpack on these 2 points as we discuss more. Malika, one is around retail to online to omni-channel and how it is changing, and second, the D2C brand phenomenon that is changing the distribution and customer acquisition perspectives, and we'll talk about these two in as we talk more. Lavanya, from your vantage point, you actually worked at Myntra earlier, and after that, you have been growing your family business. And Nalli's, of course, is a phenomenal brand and has been around since decades. But over time, you would have seen the market evolve. You have seen the customer taste changing, and in your case specifically, the distribution would have changed completely with the online platforms coming in. So, would love to get your perspective on how you have seen the market evolve.
Yes, of course. Actually, even before Myntra, I was with McKinsey. So I was out of my family business for almost 7 years before I rejoined it. And then I've been back for about the last 5 years. The changes, just to echo what Malika said, have been quite accelerated. It feels like 5 years, every 5 years is a new generation in India. So they talk about generation gap. And I feel like in India, a lot of those timelines are very, very shortened. And that's also because we started off, I think, in the 80s and 90s at a very different baseline from the rest of the world. And then we've just almost caught up in terms of technology adoption, the rise of the middle class. All of these are macro factors that create the landscape in which business owners and entrepreneurs like us play in. How have these changes impacted? I think on multiple fronts, but I'll pick two, from the consumer standpoint as well as from the business owner standpoint. From the consumer standpoint, it really is just the adoption of technology. Retail is one of the industries that have been very heavily impacted by that. But if you were to just consider maybe just 10 years ago, most of your marketing or your access to information, content, what's happening in the world, what's happening in your city, would come through broadcast medium like newspapers, television, and so on. Now that's completely changed. Content consumption is primarily through channels like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, a lot of social media that that sends very personalized content to you. So even marketing is being done in an extremely sort of hyper personalized at mass, at scale level. So as a consumer, I feel like that's happened. Of course, the online platform, e-commerce, omni-channel, it really isn't e-commerce anymore. It really truly is omni-channel. And if you look at most online brands today, the journey is something like I like something, I browse. If it's a product that is available through multiple channels, then I may do a little bit of price, um, like research. And then once I choose that I want to buy, I click and I say, okay, I want to buy. Maybe I change my mind. Most of the time, there's information that I've left a digital footprint on the e-commerce website, but then I probably get an SMS or an email saying, hey, by the way, you left something in your cart, right? And then if there are remarketing cookies, I know that's being curtailed a little bit now, then it probably follows me when I'm online doing something else on social media or whatever it is. And then finally, if I do make the sale, immediately there's a shipping and tracking that comes right to my phone, so it's right in the palm of my hand, right? And most, in some brands cases, they also do it on WhatsApp, where someone will reach out to you and say, did you like it? So, and they close the loop, which is a very, very critical part that wasn't there in offline retail. But now they close the loop to say, look, it's been about a week. How are you finding it? Did you enjoy it? Do you like it? If there's an opportunity for upsell, they sort of do that. So as a consumer, it's become a very holistic, but also you've invited the retail experience into your living room. So that's one thing that's happened. And then from the business side, I think more or less the same thing, but with one crucial difference. It used to be prohibitively expensive to set up a business and to start one, both because just from a technology standpoint, people forget that AWS is not a very old entrant. It's relatively a recent entrant. But what things like AWS, Shopify, and all of these platforms have done is that they have completely democratized the aspect of becoming an entrepreneur. So now, whereas before you have to think about, I need to get retail space, or I need to get, I need to buy my own servers, I need to have them physically located here, I need to take care of data security, encryption, all of those things. Everything has become quite democratized. I just decide that I have some products, there's a plug and play model, I pay as I go, I link it up to WhatsApp, I link it up to a bunch of these APIs, and then I'm ready to go. That, plus what's happening in the capital market and access to capital, has made it a really welcoming ground, I think, for both retailers and entrepreneurs, as well as it is a very fulfilling space for consumers.
Very cool. Lots to unpack there. We'll talk about personalization. We'll talk about hyperlocal marketing slash content-driven marketing, and we'll also talk about ease of doing business, because just the backend has been more open and less controlled now. Radhika, you have of course built ShopClues earlier, and now you're building Kind Life. So you have seen the journey as a marketplace, and now as a more controlled banded experience. So would be good to get your perspective as well on this, on how you've seen the market evolve.
Pratik, what an absolute honor to be here, and lovely to be here with both Malika and Lavanya. I've been a customer with both your brands, so super excited customer, yeah. But I think I'll take this conversation back a decade further. I started my career with Nordstrom in the US, and that was retail at its most basic, department stores, luxury department stores. And e-commerce was just about starting off, and that was the first project that I worked on, moving from the catalog business to the e-commerce business. Now I am dating myself, but the reason it's really important is that has stood a company like Nordstrom in good stead in spite of the entire ups and downs that had happened in luxury retail in the US. Similarly, in India, what has happened is when we started ShopClues in 2011, we can talk about the fact that e-commerce penetration was virtually negligible. 1%, 2%, whichever number suits your fancy. But let's go back and see how much of the retail was actually organized, right? Today we have access when we talk about, large format retail stores, etc., etc. The fact is that even today in India, organized retail is less than 20%. Retail in India is still happening through mom and pop stores that exist in all our sector markets, in our gully markets, in our local markets that are there in smaller towns and cities as well. And this is not just a tier two, tier three phenomena, right? It happens in larger cities and towns as well. Now, the entire journey has been phenomenal because when we started ShopClues in 2011, the thought process was that there is no platform which has both the supply and demand together. We bring the supply together, we bring the demand together, and we were very targeted towards tier two, tier three, and the magic will happen. And it did. It was really as simple as bringing supply and demand together, and the magic will happen. Now, as Lavanya said, that there is always a 5-year generation gap, and we can go to 2015, 2016 when Nika started. When Nika started, the conversation in the entire industry was, why would Nika survive? Amazon was going to eat everybody's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And as a vertical, there was pretty much all verticals were written off even before they started, whether that was a First Cry or a Nika. Nika survived because it identified that the customer is looking for a specific need, and it played up to Malika's point, its omni-channel presence beautifully, right? The consumer could go and see, touch and feel the product, and then go back and buy online or buy in the store, doesn't matter, because they became a Nika customer. And that was a change that happened again. So 5 years, while we 5 or 7 years, I think since we got started, we kept talking about the fact that e-commerce is the future, e-commerce is the future, e-commerce is the future, until vertical stores first cry, vertical channels first cry, and Nika came in and said that no, omni-channel is the way to go. We're in e-commerce 3.0, 4.0, doesn't matter, but we are in the next generation now, where brands like Mom and Co are coming out, which are brands, right? We went from the horizontal space, we went from, I would say, the unfragmented retail to the horizontal space to the vertical space, and now on to brands and highly curated platforms. It's not even fair to call them marketplace, because these brands, these platforms, and that's what I'm trying to build out at Kind Life as well, gives the consumer more than just bringing the supply and demand together, right? There is a certain value attached to it. And that's been a phenomenal transition when you look at the entire way retail has happened in India. When I got married, I did most of my shopping at Nalli's, Lavanya, and then I went back to buying from Nalli's last year, but now I'm all online. I don't remember when I've been to a store last, and I have a pretty good experience buying online as well. So even as a consumer, the entire journey has happened.
Pratik, I think you're on mute.
Yes, but I could not unmute for some reason. Yeah. Exciting, Radhika. And the key takeaway I would have from here is that customers have also evolved. Customers have evolved, but businesses have also evolved with them. And the new businesses that started really did not kill the older businesses. They just expanded the pie in some ways. And I also remember having this discussion 6, 7 years back that vertical commerce should be a part of Amazon and Flipkart and Snapdeal and ShopClues, and it did not seem right that a lot of these vertical companies could get created. But A, because of omnichannel, and B, perhaps because of the lack of supply of high quality products or at the right price point in some categories, a lot of these companies got started and did very
I
well.
think it's also the experience that was given. That was more critical than the supply in that case, because
Makes
supply
sense.
was still available with the horizontal place. But it is the
Makes
experience that you got buying from a Nika or from a First Cry, which was very different.
Makes sense. Awesome. This is super helpful. In the interest of time, my favorite question in any of such panels I do is I ask the panelists this question: uh, what is the one thing that you believe in about the future of retail? that most people around you don't. And maybe this time we can start with Lavanya, and then we can do the counterclockwise.
Okay, so I'll answer it in a slightly convoluted way. I don't know if you've read this book. I think it's called The Confederacy of Dunces. Anyway, it's a lovely book, and it talks about a future where everybody has moved away from visual media, right? And today, if you see, we are bombarded by content. And I feel like we're in a very nascent stage, not in the early chaotic space, but still nascent, where we haven't hit the prime of how we as consumers choose to consume content. All the things that I spoke about, the remarketing and the cookies following you everywhere, I think now with GDPR and a bunch of these other privacy rules, a lot of these things are getting curtailed. But just go a little bit deeper below the regulatory sort of changes that have happened. What is it that's happening in the world? We had all of these tools and technologies, brands, influencers, just other people, just common people started using these tools, and it became too much content. And then we started getting privacy rules and regulatory restrictions to say we don't want you actually as brands to go straight into someone's living room. I know you can, but we actually don't want you to do that. It's creating something at a societal level, which is a little bit of angst and anxiety. So my, I guess, unorthodox view is that we are going to evolve to a stage where it's no longer going to be a visual medium. Right now, we have smartphones, we have TV, we have wherever we look, we are bombarded by it. But somewhere there's also audibles, there's audio content, there's podcasts, which is almost like a subculture. It's not talked about as much as Instagram marketing or any of that. But I think that we're going to move to a space where we are going to be connected, but in much more subtle ways. And that possibly might be the next wave, where brands will have to think about how do we evolve to a space where we can't really be that in your face, right? Like you could be in your face in broadcast media. Now you're doing that in a mass personalization setting. But I think people are getting more and more aware of the toxic effects of too much digital consumption. And I think that is something that's not a consumer, it's probably an individual or a human trend, where more and more people recognize that too much of digital consumption is too bad for one's mental health. And I think it's interesting to see how that's going to evolve. And in that little more simplified world, what is the future of retail going to look like? But I honestly believe that this visual chaos is definitely going to come down, possibly by the next generation, 5 years on from now.
This is refreshing. 100%. This is actually, this is one thing that I want to agree with, but I cannot imagine the future. So this is actually very convoluted. That that I
I
never
think
thought about that way. So yeah.
But I mean, we all do it. We have noted. I mean, we have reminders that tell us you've spent so much time on Facebook, you spend so much time on it. We all do this, where we say, I would like to not spend so much of my time consuming content. I want to be more in charge of that. So right now, there's a tussle between brands finding sneaky ways of trying to push content into your lives, and then consumers saying it's too much, and I don't want to feel manipulated in this way. So I think that tension is not going to hold for very long. Eventually, it is going to get to a state where it's a bit more streamlined.
Very cool. Very cool. Good food for thought.
Wow.
Radhika, anything on your side?
I think that was amazing. That was something to think about, and you have to drop the name of the book. We all need to read that for sure. So I'll build on what you said, but on a slightly different level, right? There are these bad words that come up every decade, right? Consumerism, too much consumerism. People are buying too much, spending too much money, going out and just procuring products for themselves and not focusing on themselves. Digital consumption, I think that's another word that you talked about, that it's a bad word right now. How many hours do you spend online, whether you're shopping or whether you're consuming content, etc., etc. And I think all of this is going to combine, and COVID has kind of made it a little bit more um, in our faces, where we realize now that you can buy as much as you want, but it can also just sit in your closet, or you can buy whatever you want for the house. The consumption patterns for the consumer changed as well, and all of shopping moved online. My mom was buying from Licious, and she's not a consumer savvy. She's not an internet savvy person at all. I think over the next 10 to 15 years, the line between online and it'll still take time, but the line between online and um, offline retail will blur completely, right? You will and we see that in some of the Amazon stores in the US. When we walk in, you pick up a product and you walk out, and it's already scanned you as a prime consumer, and you're out of there. It will give the consumer a choice to live the lifestyle they want to live. I will be able to walk into a Garden or any of the other stores, pick up a Mom and Co. Product, and walk out. And or I'll walk in and I'll know that the either the store helper or my device will tell me that your products are here, pick them up and go. Payment will change completely. I think that is going to be closer to what the future is going to look like. I see some of that happen with the five odd Amazon stores that are there in the US, and there's nothing stopping that experience from coming to smaller stores close to us as well. The Whole Foods Amazon combination that happened, that's not something we've seen in India as yet. Future and Amazon fell apart. Maybe Reliance will solve for that, but that will happen where there is no distinguishing between an offline consumer and an online consumer. It just always takes us longer to do things in India, but then we leapfrog a few things completely. They might have five Amazon stores, and we might just go ahead and have 3,000 Reliance stores at the same time, where they recognize us as a consumer coming in. Radhika, I think that is going to be that's the future for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Radhika.
The future's here.
Malika, future is here already. Yes. Malika,
I
anything you
think
want
that's
to add?
Yeah, I think you put me in a difficult spot because both of them have had like very different point of views on it, and I'm going to build a little bit on both. I think to Radhika's point, I think the way shopping in retail would happen has changed, and we've already started seeing that in a few of the spaces, right? Where like I went the other day for shopping in H&M, and we're doing the exact same thing at the Good Glam group as well, where before they start billing you, they actually scan your consumer code, and after you've scanned your consumer code, the history of you shopping, whether you shop from online or offline, is married together, right? So loyalty can actually be spread across both online and offline, which is going to be from a consumer's point of view, it's a holistic complete shopping experience, which is very interesting. I actually think that it'll be very interesting to see how formats change, right? Because if you see, there is a huge amount of fragmentation in the world today, where personalization is picking up massively. And once personalization picks up online, it's going to be a way which will have to translate into offline as well. And it'll be interesting to see how retail formats make the change to adopt into personalization. We've already seen a wave come up with a few brands where, whether it is in the space of mattresses, which are kind of trying to personalize at mass level, to skincare, which is personalizing to a very, very, your particular need basis solutions. And once that happens online, you could probably do it, but then you'll have to replicate the same experience offline. And it should be very interesting to see how the world kind of takes it on, right? There's this whole new conversation on metaverse happening. And I did visit one of the stores the other day just to see how it feels like. It was crazy. It was insane and crazy, and at some level, to what Lavanya said, it was also scary at the same point of time, right? Like, the world is moving towards a space where everyone's trying to add ease into your life, but as you're doing that, the amount of information that the world has of you at large, your personal preferences, what you're watching, what you prefer, which brands do you associate yourself with. It's just too much of your information out there. But at the same point of time, it's also adding a lot of ease. And I think it's very interesting to see, my old daughter is about 11 right now. And the ease with which they navigate online is just out of the world. Like, I mean, like, for them, that's the way to go. You know, like it's for them, it's just natural. It is not online or offline. It is just shopping, and you could do it either ways. They don't differentiate it. They don't have these two worlds because they've grown up in an environment where they've just seen, and it's just very normal for them to do all of that, right? So I think it's a very interesting time to see a couple of trends come up, whether it'll be in the terms of personalization and how it's adopted, you know, with retail opening up right now and a lot of people going back to retail. I think retail has this beautiful experience led, discovery led model which you can do on certain online portals. But it has its own charm, right? And digital has its own charm because I don't waste too much of my time. Like I go like bang on saying this is what I want to do, and I go ahead and purchase that. So, and how the two get married to each other is going to be very beautiful to see in the next couple of years. And actually don't think it's too far away. You know, I honestly think that, you know, as Lavanya said in the first conversation, that it's 5 years change. So I think in the next coming 5 years, we would have seen all of this play out as well.
Awesome. This is super exciting. Yeah, sorry, Lamia, you want to add something?
So it's very cool what you said, Malika, and I think I just want to share something. I had a bit of a culture shock the other day when a person joined in my company, and then I was signing sort of the papers and everything, and I saw a date of birth, and it said 2000, and that was when it really hit me that, you know, people who were born in 2000, 2001, post 9/11, all of that are now hitting, you know, 18, 19, 20 years of age. These guys are digitally native. I saw it in another way when my son went to, you know, they had this, he's 5 years old, he went to some birthday party. And there's this table which had photographs and a glass top on it. And then this kid starts doing this. He tries to zoom it out, right?
Yeah.
And then he says, Mama, it's broken. So it's very interesting, but I think, you know, that's the shift. For people who've grown up digitally native, this is their world. There's an extremely interconnected world, right? And there is no dichotomy. There is no conflict in their heads. And it's for brands and for, you know, businesses and for us to sort of figure out all of our consumers across ages, across you know, cultural backgrounds. What is it? What is that consumer today? What motivates her? What pains her? And how do we have a position of enrichment and fulfillment and value in her life?
Very, very cool. We talked about the past. We talked about what has changed in the past. We talked about omni-channel experience. We talked about D2C brands. We talked about content consumption changing the way marketers are working. Then we talked about personalization. We talked about evolution, and evolution is the only constant thing in both on the both demand and supply side. And we talked about the future, which is scary. That we have too much content. Maybe content should be reduced. Online and offline lines are blurring, and new formats will change the way we think about retail. I know we have shot up by 15-20 minutes, but this was very exciting, and I got to learn a lot. And good start of the day. Thank you very much,
Thank
Radhika,
you.
Lavanya,
Thank you
Malika.
so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.